Welcome back to Meet the Press. If you'd like to join the conversation, we're at Meet the Press 10 or use the hashtag MTP10. Well, the week's events have certainly tested the Gillard government's relationship with the crossbenchers. Key amongst them are, of course, the Greens' Adam Bandt, who stood by the PM as the opposition pushed for a vote of no confidence in her government. Joining us now from Hobart is Greens leader Senator Christine Milne. Good morning to you, Senator. Thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Catherine.
Are you concerned over Labor's poor vote and how that might impact adversely on preferences coming your way and indeed your plight in the Senate?
Well, I'm certainly concerned that the backroom boys in the Labor Party have given such a leg up to Tony Abbott this week. That is not good for the national interest, and it's certainly not good in terms of rolling out all of the reforms we need to get through before the election, the most important of which, of course, is funding for education for schools around the country, and what we want to see is at least an effort to get through these reforms before the election.
Scott Ludlam, your senator out of WA, if the polls are reflected in the federal election that were in the state election, he may lose his seat. What can you do to protect that?
Well, certainly it's going to be a tough race for the Greens in both Western Australia and South Australia. But I think when the community realises the choice is between the Greens holding the balance of power in the Senate and returning really competent, good senators like Scott Ludlam and Sarah Hanson-Young, or alternatively giving Tony Abbott control of the Senate, I think they'll recognise that they want to see a strong alternative voice in the Senate standing up against the excesses of an Abbott government.
Senator, leaving aside all of the disunity this week and the game playing that was all a disaster, there's no denying that one of the ongoing, really damaging things for Julia Gillard politically has, from the very beginning, continued to be her backflip on the carbon tax. Are you starting to look now at the fact that the Greens pushed her so hard in 2010 to make that deal, when really it's going to end up being counterproductive because she's going to get absolutely obliterated at the next election, and Tony Abbott has promised to, overturn it. Has it actually blown up a bit, pushing her so hard in the first place?
Well, the key thing is that global warming is accelerating. We as a nation must face up to that and reduce our emissions, and the Greens did drive the clean energy package, there's no doubt about it, and that's why we're going to have $10 billion going into renewable energy. It's why our emissions have started to come down, and it was the price essentially of Labor getting government, and that is a choice that they made. The key thing though is it is the biggest reform in a decade in Australia, the biggest environmental, social and economic reform, and it is going to be the thing which generations will look back and say was the best thing that happened in this period of government.
There's no denying, though, that the way it's been brought in has been pretty shambolic. It was, it's essentially almost led to the downfall of a minority government. Was it too? I know you are not going to say that it's too high a price to pay, but could it have been done in a more methodical manner?
Well, it was done in a very methodical manner. We set up a multi-party climate committee, we worked through it, and we came out with a policy position which the International Energy Agency has said is a template for developed economies. The only reason there was any idea or suggestion that it was shambolic is because Tony Abbott went around the country telling lies. It's as simple as that. He ran a very strong campaign telling people in Whyalla that they'd be wiped off the face of the map. Barnaby Joyce ran around saying that a leg of lamb would be $100. In fact, we've just had a Queensland meat processing plant coming out saying that they were totally wrong, that they shouldn't have said it would be bad, and that in fact it has been good for their business. So the responsibility for the uncertainty and for the dislocation has all been with the coalition and with the shock jocks who were running the strong destabilisation of Gillard campaign rather than looking at the merit of the case.
Senator Milne, on Thursday and Friday there was some cheering rather than crying over the demise of Martin Ferguson. You and your predecessor Bob Brown think it's a good opportunity for the government to get real on the mining tax. But isn't the fact of the matter is that even the original mining tax was a super profits tax, and if the super profits aren't there, you can't get the revenue. That's still the case, and why would the government want to now revisit that?
Well, the reason that they'd like to, or I'd like them to revisit it and fix the mining tax is that we need the money. We've just passed the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Yes,
That's
but
fantastic
the money's not
for the
there.
country.
The money's not there.
No, I agree, Paul, and that's why we have argued strongly that we need to raise the money by fixing the mining tax. And while some of the mining tax goes to the issue of commodity...
My point is the money's not there for the miners. They're not getting the super profits.
And what I'm trying to say, Paul, is that whilst commodity prices have come off a high, the structural problems, particularly the accelerated depreciation, for example, those provisions can be fixed, as can the fossil fuel subsidies.
Okay.
There are a number of ways of raising the money, and we need that for school funding.
Just before we go, I'm wondering if you would give a tick of approval to Gary Gray, a former mining executive, who everyone thinks will get Martin Ferguson's job. I doubt if he'd be any more sympathetic than Martin Ferguson. Do you want to send a message today?
Well, I'd like to see climate and energy as one portfolio so that you get internal consistency, because you can't have an energy minister running a completely counter campaign to trying to reduce emissions. We need an energy minister who sees the value of the transition to a low carbon economy and renewables. So I'd like to see those portfolios amalgamated, and I don't think it'd be a good look to give Gary Gray the portfolio, having come straight out of an executive position of Woodside.
OK, we need to take a short break right now, and then we'll be back with Greens leader Christine Milne. You're watching Meet the Press. We return now to our guest, Greens leader Christine Milne. Now, Senator, with a no-confidence motion looming, all focus is returning to the crossbenches. All bets are seemingly now off the table. Will that be the case for Greens Senator Adam Band?
Well, the Greens don't want to see Tony Abbott being able to dominate budget week. I think it's a big mistake to even give it the time of day. We want to make sure this government goes full term, because we want to see the reforms that are in the pipeline, particularly fair funding for schools, particularly the national network of marine parks, for example. We want to see those environmental measures pushed through. We want all of these things to be done before an election, and it is a major distraction to the budget, where we're hoping to get the increase in New Start, where we need to see the single parents funding restored. Those are the things we should be debating in the lead up to the budget, not facilitating Tony Abbott's destabilisation agenda, or in fact taking people's eye off the ball of how would Tony Abbott fund education, national disability. What would he do in those circumstances?
Well, that's a very good question, but doesn't it also apply to your shopping list? Let's look at this. I mean, we've ditched the idea of a budget surplus this year. Do you think that the Treasurer Swan should go for broke and fund your wish list into deficit?
Well, certainly the Greens were one of the first people to be calling for an end to the commitment to the surplus last year. Together with a whole lot of economists, we were saying it wasn't practical in the current circumstances or economically responsible, and so we said that they should ditch the surplus, but we've also said we should raise money as well, and that's why we've gone to saying let's get rid of the fossil fuel subsidies, let's fix the mining tax, let's actually look at ways of raising revenue as well. And we've set up the Parliamentary Budget Office. We're having our policies costed, and we're really saying, let's look at what Tony Abbott is actually saying he's going to do to fill his $70 billion black hole.
Senator, I wanted to get your thoughts. Julia Gillard again this week raised the M word in Parliament, raised gender and misogyny, and it's a whether it's a political strategy or whether it's something she genuinely gets her goat. Do you think it's a topic that really should be off the table now in the lead up to the election? Do you think it's going to change anybody's minds? Should she leave it alone?
Well, I think women across Australia particularly are a bit fed up with this constant attack and belittling of women in politics, and particularly the role of a female as a Prime Minister. We've got a fantastic example in this country now with the Governor-General and the Prime Minister being female leaders. You've also got the Deputy Leader of the opposition. You've got the Leader of the Greens. It's time, I think, that a lot of those derogatory remarks ceased and people actually looked at this on their merit. And I think what we've seen, we had the apology for people who are victims of forced adoptions this week. That was driven by Senator Rachel Siewert, Greens Senator from WA. It was a very dignified event and it meant a lot to people across the country, and I'm really sorry that that moment was distracted by the backroom boys in the Labor Party, and so I'd really like to see women in leadership being given the credit for the good things they're doing.
Senator, I know you've spoken of these backroom boys and you want to hear the end of them so that the party can move forward and you can get your policies through, etc. But would you prefer to be dealing with a destabilised Gillard government or a Tony Abbott coalition that provides more stability?
Well, if you're asking me, do I want to be dealing with Tony Abbott, Barnaby Joyce and Erica Betts as the trio running the country, and then you have to ask seriously what exactly you'd be dealing with the meanness of spirit that is coming from there and the complete vacuum of any real policy positions or costings. Labor has got a responsibility to get its act together and lead the country, but the Greens provide a strong, committed, stable force that will stand up to the excesses of an Abbott government and will actually argue strongly with a Gillard government to say, let's get caring back onto the agenda. Let's get caring for people, caring for the environment. Let's actually focus on the fact we've got 1,000 children in detention in Australia. Does anyone seriously want that? Without the Greens in the Parliament, you're not going to have people talking about why we need to save James Price Point, about saving the Great Barrier Reef, saving the Tarkine. They're the sort of conversations Australians want to have. OK, well, Senator, before we leave this political segment, I'd like to talk about this man next to me, Mr Paul Bongiorno, who is celebrating 25 years with Network 10 in the Canberra Press Gallery. Paul is one of, as many of you would know, one of the country's most respected and well-liked newsmen going round. No, I'm going to keep going. And that was evident. Well, look at you there, back then, huh? And this was very evident in Canberra on Wednesday night, where both sides of politics came together at a celebratory party to pay tribute to Bonge. I was there. There were some lovely comments made from you from both sides of government. Wayne Swan, the Treasurer, was there, Tony Abbott as well. And while we've got Senator Christine Milne with us, I think she'd like to say a few words as well. Her chance. Well, congratulations, Paul. 25 years in the Press Gallery. It's an amazing achievement, and it was obvious from the coming together right across the Parliament, all political parties and other journalists saying not only what a fair and good journalist you've been, but what a great mentor to the next generation of journalists. So congratulations, enjoy the moment. We think you've been terrific.
Thank you very much, Christine.
So, Bonge, while we've got you on the catch,
yes.
the last 25 years, listening to you, you've seen it all. But you said that on Wednesday night until what happened on Thursday? What do you think has been the best moment for you in your career?
Well, that's a very big question. But as I've said this week, maybe because it's freshest in our memory, but I do think that the apology, the Kevin Rudd apology on behalf of the nation, he galvanised the nation. The opinion polls after that showed that 80% of the country was behind him. And I think it was a historic beginning to right the wrong, and it was something that moved me. But more than that, it moved the nation.
Well, it's been a pleasure working and learning from you, Bonge.
Thank you, Kath.
OK, and that's where we leave the segment. Thank you
Kath.
to both of you today, Tori and Paul, but we'll see you again soon, I'm sure.